So far, we've solved equations that have addition, subtraction, and multiplication. Now we're going to see how to solve equations that have division. Keep in mind that when we're in algebra, we're normally going to see division represented with a fraction line. So whenever you see an equation that has a fraction, just keep in mind that you can treat it as division. Here we have x over 2 equals 15. And you'll notice that x over 2 is set up as a fraction, so that lets us know that we have division here. We can read this as x divided by 2 is equal to 15. So we'll keep that in mind when we go to solve this problem. We're going to first draw our line down the middle so we can see both sides separately. And now we work on isolating our variable x. So since x is being divided by 2, we have to do the opposite, which is multiplication. So I have to multiply by 2. Now notice I'm placing that 2 next to the numerator at the top. If I were to place it at the bottom of the fraction, that would show that I'm dividing by that 2, and I don't want to divide by 2 again. I want to do the opposite, so I need to show I'm multiplying by 2, so I put it up top with the numerator. Of course, what I do to one side, I have to do to the other side. So multiply the right side by 2, and now we're going to simplify both sides. So on the left side, we have the 2 that's placed with the numerator. We can treat that as part of the numerator, and we have a 2 as the denominator. Well, 2 over 2 is equal to 1, so that left side will simplify to 1 times x. Now go to the middle and we bring down our equal sign, and then we move to the right, simplify 15 times 2, which gives us 30. And remember, when we have a coefficient of 1, it's saying 1 times x. Whenever we multiply something times 1, it doesn't change the value of that thing, so it's really just equal to x. We can write this over as x equals 30. And now that we've solved this equation, we figured out that x is equal to 30, but just to be sure, we're going to check our answer. So we start with our original equation. We're going to substitute 30 for x. So now we have 30 over 2 equals 15. Now we're going to simplify to see if we get a true equation. So 30 divided by 2 will equal 15. So we have 15 on the left side. We already have a 15 on the right side. 15 equals 15. That's a true equation. So our answer is correct. And here we have negative a over 5 equals 14. Now we know that the fraction represents division, so it's saying a divided by 5. But what's up with that negative sign in the front? What do we do with that? So, the interesting thing about negative fractions is that that negative sign can be placed one of 3 places. It can be in the front of the whole fraction like we see here, or we can put it in the numerator, so we could put it with the a, but that might not be helpful because we want to get the a by itself, so putting the negative sign with it doesn't help the a get by itself. If we put the negative sign in the denominator with the 5 though, that would make this problem a little simpler for us. So, I'm going to write this problem over, just placing the negative sign in the denominator. And that doesn't change the value of the fraction at all. It just makes it easier for us to solve. There we go. Now we have the negative sign with the 5. Now we can see how to isolate our variable. So let's go ahead and get started. We'll put our line down the middle to separate both sides of the equation. Now to isolate the variable, we're going to undo that negative 5 by doing the opposite of division. Opposite of division is multiplication. So I'm going to multiply by -5. Now notice I kept the negative sign with the 5. I have to do that to make sure that I do isolate the a. That's the only way we're going to get rid of the negative and the 5. And we're going to do the same thing on the other side of the equation. Multiply the 14 by -5, and now we simplify both sides. Since we have -5 at the numerator and denominator of this fraction, that part simplifies to 1, so that becomes 1a. Bring down the equal sign in the middle. 14 times -5 is -70. And as we've mentioned before, we don't really have to write that 1 is the coefficient of a because 1a is just equal to a. So we can write this as a equals -70. And we know our equation is solved because a is isolated by itself on one side, equal sign is in the middle, and we have our -70 on the other side. Let's check and see if this is the correct answer. Okay, we start with our original equation. And notice I put the negative sign in front of the whole fraction because that's how it was in the beginning, but you could put that negative sign with the a or with the 5. You can put it any of those three places, whichever makes this easier for you to work with. Now we substitute the -70 for a. Okay. And now we simplify to see if we get a true equation. So when we have a negative of a negative, we have a negative in front of the fraction, and then we have a -70 in the numerator. A negative of a negative is a positive. Those negatives are going to cancel each other out. So let's go ahead and treat that as a positive now. And then we just focus on the 70 divided by 5, which will equal 14. So we end up with a positive 14 on both sides. This is a true equation, which tells us that our answer is correct.